I'm Renan Osterk. I'd like to welcome you to Global Landscapes Forum. We're up here this summer in Svalbard, the northernmost point in Norway, in the Arctic Circle. And it's a place where you can really see the raw beauty of the planet as well as the effects of climate change. We just spent about half an hour at this wild leading edge of the glacier and saw some of the biggest calving events we've ever seen in our lives. And it really makes you realize how fast this planet is changing and how interconnected it all is, and how important the work that everyone is doing here to protect it. It's hard to even describe how vast this landscape is and some of the places that a lot of us don't get to see, and it really brings it together when someone says that these glaciers won't be here in another 50 years, or the polar bears won't have a habitat or ice to hunt seals off of in another 50 years. So yeah, everyone here is doing really important work, and I appreciate getting the opportunity to bring this short little message from the top of the earth.
Hello everyone, so I am Vania Olmoslao from the Youth in Landscapes Initiative, and I have the pleasure of introducing and moderating a panel on one of the most breathtaking landscapes that there are in this world, and that is mountains. I can't think of another landscape that makes us feel the power and beauty of nature as much as mountains do. So now I want us to transport ourselves to the Andes, because that is the mountain range that we'll be talking about in this panel. And this mountain range gave birth to one of the most important civilizations in history, the Incas. And this mountain range right now, it's still really relevant. We've talked a lot about the Amazon rainforest, and what is happening there is a tragedy, but we must remember that in nature, everything is interconnected. And without the forests that are growing and that exist in the Andes and that provide the services that are needed for the Amazonian landscape to exist, the Amazonian landscape would be in even more trouble. So the first speaker of this panel will be a communicator. We will also have the implementer, the supporter, and the funder. So first, let me introduce Taylor Reese. She is a filmmaker and journalist and photojournalist. She was the program director of the Yale Environmental Film Festival. She is a biologist with a master on environmental anthropology and film. Her work has achieved the 2015 Cinematography Award from the Telluride Mountain Film Festival. Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Feels like a lot of pressure to give an inspirational talk, especially at this hour, and especially when I had plans to be really depressing as well, but maybe I will hold back on that one. My name is Taylor. When I was born, my parents gave me the middle name Free Solo. Maybe some pictures. That's me. So to free solo means to rock climb without any ropes. My parents did not intend, though, for me to actually free solo up big walls when they gave me this name. The name meant to remind me that in real life, there are no safety nets. To free solo means to recognize that you are responsible for your survival, that every step matters, and that there's no hoping that it'll work out. Because hope is relying on something outside of yourself to save you. Right now, we are all free soloing. We are living on a planet with no safety nets, where the consequences of our actions are impacting not only our ability to survive, but the ability of all humans and all ecosystems to survive. A few years ago, my husband and I purchased an electric car. My husband's actually the guy in the iced that we just saw, too. And we thought it would be the one simple thing that we could do to really help the Earth. And then my curiosity perked up, and I wondered, where is this lithium coming from? Which landscapes? And whose home? It turns out that a lot of it right now is coming from the high desert mountainous region of northern Chile and Argentina, where it is processed from ancient stores of underground water. The ever-increasing demand for electric vehicles, batteries, and green technology is driving an unprecedented expansion of lithium mining, which in that region is essentially groundwater mining. As my curiosity led me closer to this issue, I was ultimately invited by the Licanantay indigenous community to come down there, to listen and to learn, and to bring their stories back to you, the international community, in hopes that we might all listen and learn. This is, next slide. This is my friend Don Jorge from Chile. And this is a drilling site near his home that pumps hundreds of thousands of gallons of water to the lithium mines. He told me in this moment that he feels like they are drawing the blood from the arteries and the veins of his body, and that every year he sees how they drill deeper and deeper to get to the water. It started to get ever more real when I was able to meet up with the indigenous people of Salinas Grandes and Laguna de Guayatayoc in Argentina. They were lying their bodies across a major highway, this is just a couple months ago, to demand meetings with the government, who has ignored their requests for consultation and protection. The biggest proposed mines in that region are cited to be built right in their home territory and set to extract groundwater that they depend on to survive. This proposed and ongoing extraction not only breaks the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, but it's crazy to think that this one simple thing, electric cars, that we have decided will clean up our air and our landscapes and improve our climate crisis, that this may also be destroying the ability for others to survive in the process. And those whose lives are worth just as much as every person in this room. So the protest went on all day and into the night, and it got incredibly cold and windy. And I had been filming for about 17 hours, and I didn't have enough warm clothes. And one of the women in this group wrapped me in a vinyl sign like a burrito, and kind of scurried me underneath the chassis of a pickup truck, and I slept for about an hour. But I was shivering uncontrollably, and eventually I decided to get up and wander back to the roadblock. And I'm so glad I did, because under those stars, in the middle of the night, I witnessed the most tremendous courage. Not hope, but courage. Not a false sense of thinking that they had some magical safety nets that they could fall into if things didn't go right, but courage. Direct action taken against power and profit, because they knew that their survival was at risk and they were going to take responsibility to do something about it. And this is the part where you're like, she was supposed to give an inspirational talk. But actually, this is the most inspirational lesson I've ever learned. This moment forever changed how I think about climate change, about sustainability, and about the protection of land and mountains and people. I learned not only that through being deeply curious, I was able to ask hard questions, examining my own life and the world around me. We all need to nurture that curiosity. We need this curiosity to see the route ahead of us, or the alternative routes, the ones that we might be missing, but that might be the most sustainable for all of us. I also learned that being deeply courageous is what we need right now. Courageous enough to let go of a mistake that you might have built your whole life around. courageous enough to face the hardest of complexities. Because if we start losing our footing now, if we give up or assume that it'll be okay, that someone will fix this down the road, we're going to fail to take direct action. We're going to fall. And if we fall, we're going to bring others down with us. Because we may not have safety nets on this mountain, but we are certainly tied together. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor. It is thanks to people like you that we get to communicate this to the broader audience. And now the second speaker for this panel is our implementer. Constantino Aucas Chutas is the co-founder and president of Asociación Ecosistemas Andinos, or Ecocan. Ecocan has taken some of the most important biodiversity issues in Peru, always with the core value of working with local communities for solutions. In 2014, Tino was awarded the prestigious Jean-Marc Vichard Conservation and Development Award for his lifetime of achievements, including his restoration work with the indigenous Quechua-speaking people of the Vilcanota Mountains in southern Peru. Welcome, Constantino.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here and try to hear about our story and experience that we are doing in Peru. It's an honor for me to be here and to be able to talk about our mission and experience in restoring Andean ecosystem. We work in conservation, coordinating with local stakeholders and in benefit of the local communities. And we are scaling with a major project called Acción Andina, Andes Action, restoring 1 million of hectares, almost 2.5 million of acres of native ecosystems in the high Andes. It's a common knowledge that the issue of climate change and its consequences are in a daily life of all of us, including of all those who doesn't want to wish that. Let me remind you that this climate change happened more than 1,500 years ago, and that it was the end of the pre-Inca cultures and the emergence of the Inca culture. The studies of Alex Chepstow-Lusty and other scientists show us that this pre-Inca culture suffered with pain a period of dry of some years, and of course, their fatal consequences. Forced them to leave their territories, looking for cooler lands and opportunities in the high Andes, looking for water, farmland, etc. The Incas and their beginnings not only faced the climate change, El Niño event, and other problems that are characteristics of this continent also. That forced them to construct aqueducts, agriculture terraces, storage houses for everything, food, clothes, materials, not just food. Incas reforested to prevent erosion, protect watersheds and the landscape. They contributed to humanity in domesticating wild species, including wild species of corn and potatoes. Imagine 3,500 varieties of potatoes. And even more, saving the world from hunger with potatoes. All this great work was only possible by practicing 3 principles: Aini, Minca, Mita, a deep sense of working together. Today I help you, and tomorrow you help me. And not just person to person or community to community. It's among the entire people. We can still admire today the results of this common purpose, tremendous structures, and results that many still today do not accept, that human beings could have done this, and they think that the Inca must have been from other planets. Seeing all this, as a descendant of this great culture, we are rescuing these ancestral practices. We are convinced that only through large-scale campaigns working closely together for the common good, we can fight the effects of the climate change. Queuñaraime is a unique community restoration festival of native polylepis trees. It's a great example of the communal work. It was born after COP20, where we did not see any concrete in the meeting, and we decided to send a message to the world. At the first, we planted 57,000 polylepis trees in a single day, and every year more. In 2019, will be 330,000 more trees with all our Andean partners. So we can together show and persist that we can restore thousands of acres of native forests and our wetlands. In this way, we care and guarantee more water for the people, safeguard the glaciers, principal water reserves, and even more, give hope to the humanity and to all the species that live inside of these ecosystems. In the last 20 years, Asociación Ecosistemas Andinos, Ecocan, has gained the full acceptance and trust of the local communities. We respect the culture and the rights of the communities. We defend them and their territories from being victims of the land traffickers and mining. We seek harmony of human, environmental, and society. Some may say that I have already done a lot, and Ecocan also, and therefore it's time to dedicate ourselves to building a house and taking the dog for a walk. But in the face of great needs that the world and humanity is facing, we are still in battle. This has happened with many of the conservation partners who once thought on retiring, and now they are very young and working together. So that there is a great project like Acción Andina can start and climb in 6 Andean countries: Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. Moreover, our leaders have all experience, energy, and conviction to do so. Local and native communities who are engaged with real and concrete actions that benefit them in the name of the conservation, they become the perfect allies. Deforestation is winning the battle because we allow it. Conservation is not a menu, a beautiful speech, and a comfortable position. Conservation will be possible only with more investment, action on the ground, and a lot of resilience. The planet demands the development of more conservation strategies, and local communities ask for it extensively. Along the Andes, local communities, conservation leaders, military, volunteers, and others want to do great things, practicing communal work with ethics and professionalism. Only then will be able to do effective work that will help our Mother Earth. Today, on behalf of everyone who loves life, I come to invite us all to join in native ecosystem restoration so that we can have some human dignity on having done something concrete for the planet. Leaving new generations some hope and planet with life and not a dead rock. Let us not be insulated in our comfortable lives, that we accelerate the destruction of the only planet we have. Let's learn and practice what years ago works, implementing the communal work to protect the world as is doing Acción Andina at the moment. For us, is the main formula. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanya, and thank you, Tino, especially for all the hard work that you are doing on the ground, and also for having become such a good friend over the last few years. Just a slight correction, Vanya. It was in Asia and not in Africa. I've never set the foot on Africa, which is a thing, but in Latin America. I spent the last 8 years living in Peru, 7, 8 years, and yeah, Tino has been one of the prime partners I've been lucky to work with. So when I first met Tino, he invited me to come out to the high Andes in the Kenya Raimi annual tree planting festival. It was like 2 or 3 years ago. I was surrounded by 700 to 1,000 people, you know, young people, old people, families, entire families, dancing, singing, you know, playing traditional instruments, and yeah, but most importantly, people were carrying up tree saplings. Tree saplings, a lot of them, 10,000s of them. I wasn't even really aware what this, the tree festival was about, but we ended up planting trees during the whole day. And I later learned that day from Tino there was 60 to 80,000 trees that we planted in one single day. I also learned from Tino that this was not a single event. This was being replicated by Tino and his colleagues all over the Andes. And they were forming an initiative to bring back ancient native high Andean forests. This was an exceptional event, but some key facts or key alarming facts remain in the Andes. Deforestation is ongoing. Only 3 to 5% of native Andean forests remain in Peru and the countries, in neighboring countries. Glaciers are melting at an outrageous pace, and communities, cities, downstream cities below still heavily rely, and even the entire Amazon basin rely on that fresh water. Large reforestation campaigns, mainly state-driven with exotic species, mainly for generating profits, have largely failed, leaving soils ruined, and most importantly, leaving people disappointed and, in a way, disillusioned. But it's been working with people like Tino that makes a true change. Luckily, Tino is not alone. He has gathered over his 3 decades of work people around him that are supporting him in his work. We founded Global Forest Generation exactly with that purpose in mind, to help native forest landscape restoration, to restore native forest landscapes restoration globally. And that with a radical emphasis on implementation and scale. So how do we do that? At the moment, we're working with a range of partners, around 15 to 20, or 10 to 15 partners across the 6 Andean countries that Tino mentioned. We're building an infrastructure with all these projects. We're connecting all these projects, building a common infrastructure of implementation, restoration implementation project. We're building an infrastructure to allow the project to speak the same language, to have common metrics, common budgets, be comparable in a way. And that allows Tino and his colleagues to communicate better the work that they're doing, to measure progress, to monitor, to map out what is missing, what is being done, and what we need to do next. We're working with all the partners to also look at their models, go from just tree planting, that is a very, very important part, and we'll put a lot of emphasis on it, but towards integrated landscapes models. It's taking care of conserving native standing forest, protecting native standing forest, creating protected areas, looking at drivers of deforestation. It's then also looking at how the communities, creating, a glass of water or something? No. How the communities, micro businesses that can help support their livelihoods. And it's especially helping Tino and his team, sorry about that, Tino and his team to scale up the tree planting efforts that they're doing. How do we do that concretely? We're working with exceptional people like Tino, like his colleagues. It's really about the underground leadership that they are bringing to the table. Those people have long-term experience, and they have existing community relations. They've been the ones working with the communities for over 30 years, and we're relying on them to, really scale up the models that they have been developing. We're then working with, global organizations like the Global Landscapes Forum and others to communicate the urgency and the need of scaling up restoration. We're working also with finance partners like South Pole, philanthropies, multilateral banking banks. We're working with project developers. We're working with the emerging carbon funds, water funds across Latin America to connect those projects to the funds to the projects on the ground. So I ran out of time. Just highlighting again the key energy here about collaboration in the room, and we've heard so many incredible alliances and organizations. I will just call to every organization to help each other, to bring their key expertise we've all been developing over the last couple of decades, and to support people like Tino to scale up their work. Thank you.
Thank you, Florent. Now we will hear from the funder. Urs Deitrich is a land use fund manager at South Pole, a global climate solutions provider founded with the aspiration to realize climate action for all. With a university degree in tree hugging, Urs worked as renewable energy asset manager for institutional investors in order to become fluent in Wall Street, a skill he now applies to nature conservation challenges. His further experience includes serving as focal point of the major group Children and Youth at the United Nations Forum on Forests. Urs has worked in forestry and conservation projects in Indonesia, Colombia, Kenya, Armenia, the United States, Germany, and Switzerland. I hope I get those right this time. Building on the Concrete Mountain Restoration Initiative that we've just heard, Urs will share South Pole's innovation in designing conservation finance vehicles to bring to action the aspirations of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. Welcome, Urs.
Thank you, Vanya. Hello, everyone. We're not yet a funder, but let's see if everything works out fine. And yeah, thank you so much. First of all, big shout out to all youth in the room and all youth online. You guys are really turning the tides. Thank you for being here. You do it, okay. As we can see, conservation is happening everywhere, and communities are doing their share in restoration, as you can see from Tino's talk. Intermediaries that connect communities among each other and that help them build very, very strong alliances are doing their share, like Florent with Global Forest Generation. And we with South Pole, we try to get everybody else and corporate investors also to do their share and to enable them to do their share. We need to build an economy around restoration, like Jennifer Morris said earlier. Thank you for that fantastic statement. Before we dive in, let me just quickly introduce South Pole. We have helped sequester 170 million tons of CO2, and we have actually helped create 100,000 jobs. We have protected 2 million hectares of forests and 5.5 million hectares of land altogether. Sounds like a lot, I think. But no. I think we're all failing like everyone else. I think we need to do much, much more. There's so much work for all of us. With 18 offices around the globe, we're really trying to be where the action is, and we want to create climate action for all. Many of the numbers that you see here, you know. There's space for 1 trillion trees on this planet without compromising food security or anything else that we enjoy today. 37% of cost-effective climate mitigation can come from natural climate solutions. And the good thing about this is we only need 1% of globally invested and reinvested capital each year to achieve that, 1%. Now the problem is we're not there yet at all. If you look at the graph here, the yellow bar is public funding, and the green bar is private sector capital. On the left is where we are today. The middle bar shows the conservation finance gap. We need to scale up investments in conservation, which includes restoration and resilience building, by 30-fold in order to unleash the potential that is out there. Now, I was really going to show you some very complicated investment structures to just show what we're doing, but then I thought, let's better just back off a little bit and agree on a few principles that we have found from our 13 years of experience are instrumental for effective conservation and restoration scaling. Quantifiable impacts. So how do investments work, right? In order to get something, you give something. This is how we live today. This is the society that we are in today, so we have to be able to give something. Whether that be a financial return or an environmental return that can be quantified and therefore monetized is instrumental. Projects need to be scalable or replicable. which for investors reduces risk. They also need to be investable, which means they need to be administrative structures and a management that just shows that there's accountability. And lastly, landscape integration, something very important to us because it helps build long-term results and scalability as well. Now, what funders do we have at hand? Corporates. Corporates are really realizing that they are really not where they are supposed to be and where they said 5 years ago they were going to be by 2020. We help them achieve that. And we believe that carbon finance plays an important role here. Also, philanthropies and development finance institutions are increasingly developing programs that we can leverage in a blended finance structure. The same goes for co-investors. Return-seeking capital really turns the tides. So we are structuring programs all together to bring them in a structure. And funnily, last week, or actually this week, I talked at a panel on blended finance at the Deutsche Bank in like Wall Street and like the 47th floor. And actually it wasn't even the only meeting. I talked at 2 other ones that, you know, just had all these bankers in there, investors in there, and they really, you know, made the impression to care about biodiversity and conservation restoration. Now, again, Jennifer, quoting you, you know, how do we get from the boardroom to the biome, right? This is where we come in and where we build structures, blend financial sources to enable these commitments to take place in the real world. And this is why we're so stoked about Tino and Florent to work on these fantastic initiatives on the ground. In the end, we're also with Southbook creating a foundation to increase transparency. Communities and corporate investors and other investors have a right to know what's going on, and I think this will definitely be key to scale and bring everything together. In the end, if any of this sparked your curiosity, please talk to me. We haven't things figured out at all. If you're a project developer, an entrepreneur, an investor, please talk to us. We can only figure things out together and develop powerful partnerships. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Urs. So now, because we are running out of time, I'm going to ask all of our speakers to just please stand up. And then I'm going to ask you, you all have a lot of experience. In one sentence, please let us know what Acción Andina, what's the secret to make it work? One sentence, please.
Trust.
That was a short sentence. Collaboration. I follow the line.
Listening to your own values and living them.
Staying really curious about the questions beneath the questions.
Thank you very much. Another round of applause to them.